Now on TTT, Talk City 91.1 FM, TTT Live online and TTT.live. Well, in the 2017-2018 budget, the agriculture sector was targeted as one of the sectors earmarked for special focus within the government's diversification strategy. What has the Ministry of Agriculture done over the last year as it relates to that? I have with me Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Clarence Rambharat, to tell us some of the accomplishments of the ministry and some of the challenges as well. Minister, good morning and welcome.
Well, the ministry's work, thank you very much. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. The ministry's work has been in four main categories for the last fiscal year. The first is in the policy work of the ministry. We've done some significant policy work in the areas of livestock, aquaculture, fisheries, and some of the other areas. We've done some legislative work. I've talked a lot about this 106-year-old fisheries legislation that we have in the country and the long need and the attempts to bring modern legislation. We have before the Legislative Review Committee of the Cabinet a draft bill that would modernize our fisheries operations. We have an animal health bill that will modernize what we do in relation to animals, and we've done some other work, legislative work. We've done some infrastructure work, things like the Carenage Fisheries Facility that was commissioned by the Prime Minister, a long outstanding project. We've done some smaller infrastructural work, and on the soft side we've been able to finally get the Discovery Center, the Emperor Valley Zoo going. And on the operational side, we started the fiscal year with the bad weather in October, which followed Brett in May, June. I've spent most of this year, reversing some of the damage that has been done, trying to get the farmers back on their feet. And once again, we're in bad weather period, so it's something that as a country we have to deal with. How do we mitigate the effects of changes in the weather pattern, and how do we protect and make our farmers more sustainable? Going forward, I have two things that will occupy my time for the next 2 years at least, and that is land tenure and IT upgrades and putting the business of the ministry online. We've made some progress in both areas, but my focus in the next fiscal year is to accelerate what we're doing in terms of reversing the long period of delay and frustration of farmers in relation to land tenure, and upgrading and bringing business services of the ministry online so that people can do business without leaving home.
So a lot of work has been done over the last year, but one thing that stood out when the Minister of Finance made his presentation last time was the food import bill. Yeah. And from 2003 to 2016, the import bill was about 8.91 billion US dollars, which is about 56.9 billion TT dollars. Yeah. Over the last year, have we seen a decline or an increase?
Well, I imagine that, let me just go back to the start. I'm not a minister that is too consumed with the food import bill in terms of the figure. I've not set a target for reducing the food import bill. What I've said is that in the food import bill, you have controllables and you have uncontrollables. We will continue to be an importer of grain, rice, milk, meat, and some of those things. What we have to focus not only from a policy point of view, but an individual consumption point of view. We have to focus on these things that can be produced here and can be consumed as an alternative to what we import. And to do that, we must first, at the heart of farming is land. Well, we have new technologies that allow us to reduce reliance on land, but at the heart of the investment any food producer is going to make is the issue of tenure. And that is where the focus has been. My view is if you give a long-term lease to our farmers, they would be motivated to invest, they'd be motivated to produce, and we would be able to offer alternatives to the people who currently consume imported food.
Yeah. And as you mentioned that, the minister did also say, Finance say, that there is a shortage of farmers. Is that still the case?
My approach is this. There's always been this talk about mega farms, and I'm not a minister consumed by that. I've said we should be producing mega farmers in Trinidad. We have pretty good farmers, but with more land, with focused support, with incentivization, we'd be able to grow medium-sized farmers and small farmers into bigger producers and more sustainable producers. And if we do that, what we would do, we'd strengthen farming families. I know that, previous governments and ministers have tried to encourage young people into farming. We've always had this talk about CPEP and URP and the prisoners and all of that. I'm not consumed by the cliche and the old talk. My view is that if we have core farmers in the country, I need to strengthen them and give them the capacity to produce more.
And the incentives that were announced in the last budget?
We've done a lot of work on that. It's been in two parts. One is a comprehensive review of the current way in which we deal with incentives. And I saw a newspaper article last week which said that said that farmers are driving vanity vehicles, and I was at pains to correct it. I didn't say farmers, I said so-called farmers. These are people who are registered by the ministry as farmers. They have a farmer's card which entitles them to access incentives, but they have zero or very little production, and that is the point that I make. What we want to do is that we want our incentives to target people who are actually producing. This new incentive announced in the last budget, we spent a lot of work to craft it and to put the framework in place. We are about to launch it, and it targets people who are producing.
And one other thing very quickly there, Minister, the agro-processing and light industrial park in Moruga.
The construction has started. The expectation is that that would help us to take some of the primary production of southeast Trinidad and other parts of the country. And the main thing about Moruga is that it's going to be private sector driven. We're creating the opportunity for the private sector to produce.
Yeah. Minister, we have to take a break from this conversation,
Thank you.
we will come back and continue this discussion because agriculture is going to be a big talking point for the budget and following the budget as well. Lisa.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, and I'm very excited to hear more. I want to hear about the application of technology. I know you're big on hydroponics, Minister, and also goat rearing. Maybe even if you don't get to talk about it online, I want to talk about it offline as an alternative, you know, to cow's milk, for example. Goat rearing is, you are?
I am.
Fantastic. So we will talk about that because, you know, there's so many alternatives with regard to goat rearing and the offshoots and the other products outside of the meat itself. But we're going to come back to you. You know, we keep it really pacey on the show this morning.
Trained in 85 farming courses, 482,100 nursery plants and planting material for crops such as cocoa, citrus and other fruits were produced and distributed to farmers and the general public. 1,900 applications were processed under the Agricultural Incentives Program. Continuing to talk about the agriculture sector is Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Clarence Rambharat. Minister, thank you for staying with us.
Sure, no problem.
And you heard some of the figures that I would have just mentioned. This was between 2016 and 2017. From 2017 to now, any more training initiatives?
Well, of course, the ministry is one of the strengths of the ministry is in training. There is a lot of demand for training. In many cases, when the programs are advertised, they are booked right away. And then we're trying to do some of the ones that are in higher demand, for example, hydroponics and aquaponics, trying to do more of it around the country. Of course, the private sector is also involved in training, and where we believe that the private sector can do training, we encourage the private sector to do it. We would not compete with the private sector. In terms of planting material, yes, we continue to produce. We had a problem with citrus, of course, that we're dealing with, but in the other areas, apart from producing locally, we continue to look at what could be imported. In fact, in Guyana last week, when I was there with the Prime Minister, we discussed with the Guyanese about coconut, for example, and the prospect of imported some of the plants from Guyana. I know, I don't want to get in trouble, but I know some already come into the country. I try my best to have the law enforced, but we do in fact have people who bring material illegally. It's not something I would encourage. We do not want any pests or diseases from outside the country coming into the country. But we have been working to make it easier for people to bring material, including the ministry, into the country.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, coconut, the coconut rehabilitation and replanting program, how is that?
Well,
going?
the thing about that is that I've just found that that moves, you know, far too slow. We go through, the ministry goes through a very tedious process of creating this planting material, and that is one of the reasons why I look to Mexico, Brazil, and now Guyana to be able to provide us with planting material. We've done some work with Mexico and Brazil. There's always a reluctance on the part of those other countries to dispose of their material. We're very happy to get Florida to give us some of the citrus that we're using to reverse the effects of citrus greening. But I will continue to balance between creating local planting material and looking to import.
Where is our strength in the agriculture sector locally?
The strength is in the strength of the farmers. We have excellent farmers. You know, we talk about diversification, and we forget that Trinidad was once an agriculture economy. Of course, the agriculture was based on the need to export to the empire. And as we move into greater industrialization, of course, the agriculture, combined with pests and diseases, the influence of witch broom and some of the other things, we lost ground. But through that, we've had farmers who have survived. We have good farmers. We have good training at both of the universities. We could do better. We could do better on the practical side, and that is the strength of our ability to feed ourselves.
And how do we get back to being an agriculture economy, if we are to do so?
I don't think that should be an objective. This talk about agriculture replacing energy. I think that we waste time on some of these things. It's not grounded in economics. It's not even grounded in common sense. To move agriculture from 0.4% contribution to the GDP and displace oil, I'm not wasting my time with that. What I want to do is strengthen the ability of farmers to survive. And if you want to talk about oil and agriculture, well, I've said it over and over. Every energy company in this country who comes to make an investment gets a lease to start off with. We don't tell the oil companies, go off in the ocean and explore, and we will sort out the issue of your licensing and your statutory arrangements and so on. And we have farmers waiting 30, 40 years for their leases. What has happened over a period of time is that you have 2 generations in a family that has become completely demotivated because the parents are farming on land and the lease has either long expired or has never been granted. And if you can demonstrate as a government, as a country, that you can give somebody a long-term lease, then the investor in return will be motivated. And that is what we have to do. And I'm sorry if people find I'm too focused, but I want to be the Minister of Agriculture that gives out the most leases to farmers in this country. That's my objective.
How has that gone so far?
It's gone well. In the last few months, my colleagues in the cabinet will tell you that I continue to inundate them with these cabinet notes dealing with leases. We've made significant progress in River Mayaro County. We continue to make progress. I thank the staff at the Land Management Division, at the Office of the Commissioner of State Lands, the Permanent Secretary. There's a lot of people working on this, but it's not just the paper-based work that we've been working on. We've been working on the technology to make it easier. Like I've spoken a lot of times about the fact I was dealing with files all through the weekend, and you talk about a very thick file with paper going back to 1940s and 30s. It's very difficult, but while we work with the paper, we are also working with the technology. We recently, last week Friday, I launched a new website of the ministry. Yes, that is a portal that will be used for land applications online and other business services, but there's a lot of back-end work that has gone into it, which will allow us to manage lands in a different way, particularly using digitized files.
So people can now go onto that website?
They could go onto the website. I'm going to formally launch the application for new applications for new lands, and in the coming weeks I expect to also start the distribution of a card that will allow those farmers whose files have been digitized to be able to access their files electronically.
In a couple of weeks?
Yeah, definitely so definitely before I stand up to speak in the budget debate.
And that means that it's before the end of October?
It's before the end of the October.
A date planned already? I see you smiling.
No, it's soon. It's maybe before my birthday, which is 17th October.
So, Minister, we'll have to bring you back because I know we like to make cake inside here.
All right. Once it's completely local, I'm going to begin that.
We have an in-house chef in Cary, so we'll talk to him about getting you that cake, and we'd have to invite you. One thing that Lisa mentioned as well before we ended the first interview was that issue of milk and goat milk rather than cow milk, and doing that. And that's
well, yesterday I was in Moruga with my colleague, the Minister of Trade and Industry, and the people from Export TT. Export TT has given a research grant to the Moruga Hill Rice project. I think it's a great project. I think it needs our support. And the point I made is that you have to be careful that niche products, you don't try to make it mainstream products. I made the point, I don't see Moruga Hill rice, for example, displacing local white rice or regular rice. I mean, when you think about it, parboiled rice from the United States lands in National Flour Mill's plant at a lower price than local white rice. So you have to look at the economics of it. But there are niche markets, and goat milk is a niche market. The current producers in the country cannot produce enough to satisfy the milk market, and then there's also the value-added market. I could vouch for it. It's a superior taste. I must say that Nestle has also done a lot of work. You see the local fresh packaging, which is the milk that is the local milk. They would like to do more. You can't force people to be in the dairy business, but again, we've been doing some work on the good dairy farmers to make them better.
And then we had started the conversation with Buffalipso.
Yeah.
Where has that gone?
Well, I think I created a lot of Buffalipso experts with my comments, and I hold to what I've said. The time, you know, we've passed the stage of the Steve Bennett Buffalipso. We've passed the stage. There are varieties of it that would take us into the future. But most of our livestock farmers are importing animals, some of them from Canada and other places. It's either you import animals for beef or you import it for dairy. And it all depends on what the farmers find to be. In fact, this new incentive includes the opportunity to apply for the grant for breeding stock, and it might be imported breeding stock. And again, when we were in Guyana last week, we talked to the Guyanese government about the opportunities which exist with Trinidad and Guyana in relation to livestock.
Minister, last year, the Ministry of Agriculture got just around $0.54 billion.
Not billion.
Yeah.
0.54.
Yeah,
okay.
in the budgetary allocation. What is the expectation?
It might have been more than that. When you combine the development, the recurrent, the development, and some we get via other agencies. I think I came up with 1.1 billion. The thing about it, I'd say what I've said all the time. It's not how much you get, but how well you spend it. You have to understand something. We're going to be allocated maybe about 700 million on the recurrent budget. 70% of that goes to salaries and wages. I have no control over that.
Right.
I have some control. The rest of it goes to float, TSCT, WASA, security, and those sorts of things. That is the reality. So you have to manage. You have to manage what remains. And on the development program, we routinely ask for 5 or 10 billion in the development program. You get a smaller amount, a significantly smaller amount. What you get, you work with it, and you manage it. I think we've done, particularly this year. I want to thank the accounts division and the permanent secretary. I was with them on the weekend as we push at the end of the year to make sure we can pay out as much of our bills as we could do. And a particularly important part of that was the farmers, payments of farmers who were affected by the bad weather, and the government made a specific decision to provide them with assistance.
Understand, I just want to wrap on the budget convo for a while because I know the hunting season is starting and everybody is...
Well, hunting and the budget is the same day.
Exactly, exactly. So your two goals for the next 2 years would be
land tenure and IT, which allows people to do business with the ministry online.
So that is something that we'd have to look forward to, and I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more from you on those two topics. So on October 1st, the hunting season will open.
Yes, the hunters are going to be out again in those areas where hunting is allowed. We always have a debate every year. In the last year, I focused on the scarlet ibis, which is not to be hunted, unlike the 5 species which could be hunted in the upcoming season. Things have improved. I would like to see the hiring of more game wardens by the Public Service Commission. We've made up some ground. I want to see more. We have vacancies in the Forestry Division. I encourage the Public Service Commission to fill those vacancies. We're going to appoint again honorary game wardens to supplement what we have. And I, of course, take a personal interest in being vigilant, more vigilant during the hunting season, because we have to strike the balance between doing the right thing, sustainability, and ensuring that the law is observed. But of course, when it comes to wild meat, the big problem is really the illegal importation of meat that is likely of a substandard quality. And as a meat eater myself, I urge people to be careful what you buy and what you consume. And if you're dealing in wild meat, deal with people that you know well, and avoid the illegal imports.
One concern that people have always raised is the fact that people go and they hunt and they post pictures on social media of everything that they get, and that is raising concerns for some people.
Well, I mean, you can't stop people from doing that. The issue is you have different issues. You don't want people to be hunting out of season. And if people hunt in season and they want to display what they've gotten, fine. You have species that people don't like me to say this, but you have certain things that need to be culled. For example, the agouti. The agouti represents a threat to the farmers. You can't have an overpopulation. Even in the forest, the animals control their own population. So you have to control the population in terms of some species. I don't think that the iguana or the agouti is under threat. But there are things like the deer, for example, that I'm concerned about, and the experts are looking at from a scientific point of view at the data that is available. I'll tell you one thing about the iguana, though. Having been around the urban areas, I accept what people in urban areas say to me, that from a crime point of view, they are seeing that strangers are coming into their yards to pick up or hunt the iguana. And I have referred it to the Wildlife Conservation Committee, the committee that advises me.
Yep.
And I want to say that I'm giving careful consideration to restricting hunting of iguanas in urban areas from a security point of view.
All right, thank you very much, Minister Clarence Rambharat, Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, for talking to us about budget. And also the hunting season, which is the same place as the same day as the budget. Minister, thank you very much. We now have to go to your travel weather forecast with Ian Wallace.